War is what happens when language fails. It's a quote by Margaret Atwood, the author of the novel that we're going to tackle today, we're going to talk about today. So this novel is The Handmaid's Tale, of course, that, it's worldwide famous, and I hope that you heard of it before. So the themes that this novel fits in are expressing oneself and maturing and debating as well. Okay, so we're going to try and understand why this novel fits in these two themes today. So let's talk briefly about the writer and the novel itself. So Margaret Atwood was born on the 18th of November 1939, okay, beginning of the Second World War, and she was born in Ottawa, Canada. So she's a Canadian, okay, Canadian writer. I just remind you of the pronunciation, okay? So she's a Canadian writer, best known for her prose fiction and for her feminist perspective, okay? She is a very, very feminist woman, and she's very representative of what feminism could be like in art. So she began writing at the age of 5, and she resumed her efforts more seriously 5 years later. Okay, so resumed, she started again. Okay, you know how it is when you play video games, for example, and you resume playing. That's it. So she studied at Victoria College at the University of Toronto, and she completed a master's degree in literature, in English literature, okay, and at Radcliffe College in Massachusetts, 1962. Role reversal and new beginnings are recurring themes in her novels, and all of them are centered on women seeking their relationship to the world and the individuals around them. She likes writing about women. For example, she rewrote a monologue by Gertrude in Hamlet, in which she confesses the crime that Shakespeare didn't want to openly write about in the play. So it's very relevant, and it shows how much she wants people to see women, okay, as equal to men. Okay, the novel itself was written in 1985, okay, and then adapted for a movie first in 1990, then for an opera in 2000, and afterwards for a TV show in 2017. The novel somehow became famous during Donald Trump's term, and it's a unique term in office, and it's important to keep it in mind because Donald Trump is known for being misogynistic, and I think that if the novel became famous again at that time, it's rather relevant of what was going on in the country at this very moment. So the novel is set in New England in the near future, and the story revolves around a society created in response of a fertility crisis. Revolves around, you can use it for any classic, the story is built around this idea. That's it. So the story is told by Offred, whose life has drastically changed when she was kidnapped to become, okay, to become part of this society I mentioned at the beginning, and she was reduced, and this is what you can keep in mind, she moved from being a woman to being a womb. Womb is where children are growing in their mother's belly, so it's really interesting. Both start with the same syllable, okay, and I think that you should know these two words when you talk about this novel. So she is telling the story as it happens from her point of view. So, of course, we can wonder if she's a reliable narrator or not, okay? The question remains asked. So the whole story is told from her point of view, I said it, and it is made of flashbacks, asides, and different ways of speaking and addressing the reader that are really interesting, and that makes this novel a rather complex one. So the genre is dystopia, of course, because we are in the near future showing chaos and that's the main definition of it. But actually, the writer itself called it speculative fiction. Okay, and it's really interesting to keep this term in mind when you talk about this novel as well. Okay, so unmissable characteristics about it. As I'm used to saying, it's important to make your own opinion about reading the novel, trust your emotions, your questions, your shocks maybe when you read the novel, and use them in your analysis of it. Anyway, they are what I call unmissable characteristics that you have to keep in mind when you talk about it. So the novel was written exactly 12 years after the Roe v. Wade was voted by US Supreme Court, and it made abortion possible for women. It's important because the novel is about fertility and using women as mothers more than human beings, and it's important to keep this idea in mind. It's a very, very important landmark, especially due to the current issues today. So simple story with a complex setting. The story is rather simple. Women become mothers. That's it. They only have to make children, and this is what they are expected to do in this society. Nothing else. They're not supposed to think, not supposed to feel, not supposed to speak, and this is what this novel is all about. Atwood wanted to question her ancestors' Puritan heritage. Okay, precepts are like the heritage. The United States and Canada as well are rather Puritan countries, and it's interesting to see this happening there. The rhetorical aspect in the novel is very important too. There are numerous neologisms, invention of words, okay, used in the novel by Atwood to name what is called the ineffable. Okay, ineffable is something that you cannot say, something that you shouldn't dare to say, and it's important to name it to a certain extent, and what shouldn't be said is named in this novel, which makes it very interesting too. For example, a handmaid is a legalized prostitute, but at the same time it's also a surrogate mother. So no quotation mark at all in the novel. When Offred is reporting someone else's speech, she reports it as if it was hers. There is no quotation mark at all in the novel, and it's a choice made by the writer as well. Sorry. So human bodies as political instruments, and this is what I was mentioning earlier. Women become bodies more than humans. Okay, and it questions the place of women in a patriarchal society. So it's really interesting to keep this in mind. So analysis of interesting quotes in the novel. So this is another step that is interesting, and a recent promotional picture as well that I thought would be interesting to show you as well in this video. So I would like to believe this is a story I'm telling. I need to believe it. I must believe it, blah, blah, blah. I let you read the first quote. Okay, so in this quote, what is interesting is actually the fact that she is wondering many things about her future. She has no future at all, okay? And she would like to believe the story she's telling because she's full of hope at some point. But actually, she wonders if she's right. Hoping for something that might never happen in the future. That means resuming her life, her former life. Okay? Then I have control over the ending. If it's a story, because it might be history happening, something really happening. So if it's a story, then I have control over the ending. If it's a story, but what if not? Okay, so it's interesting. There will be an ending, blah, blah, blah. So this quote is very interesting at the beginning. Another one is the second one. I'll give you 2 minutes to read it. Okay, so here she's talking about her body as if it was something external to her. It's really interesting. This paragraph is made of metaphors and even similes at some point to to talk about her womb, okay? I repeat the word. And it's important to keep it in mind. Here, she's showing how much her body is not hers anymore. And she mentions the notion of pleasure, okay, that she doesn't feel anymore, because even when she has sex, it's for the only purpose of giving birth to a child. Okay, so here it's really interesting to consider this quote as well. And the reference to the cloud here around a central object, okay? So the womb is not part of her body anymore, it's an object, as if something external was placed in her. And this is what she refers to. It's rather relevant as well. Okay, so here is another quote. Ignoring isn't the same as ignorance. You have to work at it, offered. So ignoring is a fact. Ignorance is a state of mind, okay? And she doesn't want to stay ignorant, okay? She doesn't want to ignore anything, and she tries not to, but at some point, maybe it's her only escape in this very smothering society. Smothering, okay, étouffante. Smothering society. Oh. Well, so here I wanted to finish on this image because I thought it was a very strong one. She is trying to put this book in fire, which is impossible, to set this book ablaze. It's impossible because it's not burnable. And this is what I wanted to show you. At some point, writers, artists were limited in their work because in some societies, for example, Nazi Germany, for example, books were burned, and this is what we call book burnings, autodafé in French. And this is a version of The Handmaid's Tale that cannot be burnt. And it's very recent, and it's about to be put on sale, and it's interesting to keep it in mind. It shows what Margaret Atwood, especially featuring herself setting the book ablaze, it shows how much she wants to count in this society. She wants her work to make people think, and it's important to keep it in mind. It's a very good transition to the last part, the portfolio. I'm not going to explain everything in details, but I've put 3 examples of different things that you could include in a portfolio about if you want to deal with The Handmaid's Tale. Revolutionary Road, starring Kate Winslet and Leonardo DiCaprio for the 2nd time together. It's not Titanic anymore, but also a tragedy, and I don't tell you more. Then, of course, the feminist spoken word artist Amanda Gorman, that you know now. I don't need to give explanations about Lady Gaga, but this song, Till It Happens to You, is about abortion, and it's interesting. And 2 poems, I think, that could also be considered interesting in a portfolio about it. So it leads us to the conclusion. Thanks for watching. I hope that my explanations were helpful and relevant to you. Good luck reading The Handmaid's Tale. Goodbye.